Founders see sales as like a metric versus like a research experiment. Sales is not sales. It should feel like you're actually adding to the value of your company because you're doing deep research. It's unfortunate that sales is seen as like this rote process when in fact it can be really fun and enjoyable. I think you need to have fun with sales. A lot of folks, I think, spend years trying to follow a playbook and a template and then realize after 5 to 10 years that it wasn't how they would have wanted to do things based off of their own instincts and values. Are you a technical founder who's been afraid of sales or who's been procrastinating on your sales process or activities? My name's Peter An, currently the Chief Customer Officer at Tiger Beetle, but was early on at places like Google, Dropbox, and Slack, where I helped pioneer some of their first enterprise deals. And I have some ideas for you that you'll want to listen to throughout the course of this video. I think the reason why they find sales so intimidating is because the examples of salespeople out there doesn't look or feel or sound like them. They think of it as like a huge act or like they're getting up on stage and everybody's nitpicking everything they say and they think that's sales. So a lot of my work is around breaking those preconceptions and making people realize sales is actually not a presentation, it's a conversation. And there's a lot of communication hacks you can leverage to make sure you make the conversation feel comfortable, not only for yourself, but the other side as well. So that's one part of it. I think once founders realize that sales is more about connection, trust building, and communication techniques, it changes their mindset. The other thing too is the sales process often feels daunting because a lot of founders come to me and they're like, I gotta get to my checklist. I gotta get to sending out 100 cold emails today. I just keep procrastinating and putting it off. And when you think of sales as a process or a template or a playbook, it automatically kind of buckets it as part of your checklist. Whereas I get people to realize like, hey, if it's draining to you to send 50, 100 cold messages, you should change your sales style so that you don't have to just think of it as like a volume-based exercise. Now, if you reframe that and instead of looking at it as like, I'm going to send 100 messages, you actually say, hey, I'm going to learn about 20 people today that I think could get help from my solution, it changes your mentality and how you approach that activity. Founders see sales as like a metric versus like a research experiment. And I think that's also a big unlock too with my clients is like, sales is not sales. It should feel like you're actually adding to the value of your company because you're doing deep research. And so that's also like another thing that I try and get founders to realize. And it's unfortunate that sales is seen as like this rote process when in fact it can be really fun and enjoyable if you treat it like a curiosity exercise. I think those are like the two main things that I think early stage founders can use support and help on is communication techniques to turn sales into a conversation, not a pitch, to connect with people that could become long-term partners of yours. I think the best way to find your own sales voice is first of all to experiment with different tactics and different strategies. I think you need to have fun with sales. A lot of folks, I think, spend years trying to follow a playbook and a template and then realize after 5 to 10 years that it wasn't how they would have wanted to do things based off of their own instincts and values, right? So I always think of sales as like a fun experiment that you can run. And based off of kind of different strategies and tactics, you'll know, I think, how you feel against those tactics and strategies. For me, it's really easy to say, hey, just follow your principles and values, but you can't find that off of 1 or 2 calls. You have to basically continuously repeat different ways of finding your own voice. And you're also going to need to fall on your face several times too and embarrass yourself before you realize, oh, that way of speaking or that way of phrasing I thought was going to work, but just completely didn't. Let me pivot off of that. So just like kind of product development, actually, sales is a giant experiment and finding your own voice is a giant experiment. I didn't speak like this when I first was in sales. I ended up speaking like this because I tried so many different iterations of talking and writing and pitching that eventually I was able to hone into my own voice. That's what I would say is the best way to find your voice is don't be afraid to fail at conveying your values and principles and your instincts. And through those failed attempts, you will find a happy medium that fits with like professionalism, your personal values, having fun, being creative, and being able to be comfortable with showcasing your own personality, your hobbies, your interests, etc., etc. There's no silver bullet to finding your voice. It's going to require a lot of trial and error. So now that we've talked about why there's such a hesitancy to approach sales from a technical founder mindset, let's talk about some actionable things you can do today. I think the first thing I would do is, if you're used to like selling and you have a pitch deck that you typically present, I would just try for fun, like on the next call, don't even have the pitch deck as like the central entree you're going to present on the call. Experiment with just having a two-way conversation and time yourself. You can have like a little timer next to you. Every time you start talking, press that timer and see if you can make it so you're not speaking for more than a minute. And then the trick then after that is to, after every kind of statement you make, force yourself to ask a question. And the question has to be something that segues from or to another topic. So I think that's one thing, like a really fun game founders can play with themselves around, hey, am I unlocking a two-way dialogue conversation? And can I make something really compelling? Can I use phraseology that's really compelling that doesn't even require a deck? Because the storytelling aspect, the back and forth is going to actually carry the conversation. So that's one thing around improving communication that founders can try like immediately on their next call. On the sales process, if you're one of those founders who are like, oh, I know I have to reach out to 100 people. I know I have to set up a cold email campaign. I know I have to do X, Y, and Z. Usually these founders come to me and say, I want to do this because my other founder friends have found success. Like I just talked to a founder at like a happy hour and they said, oh, like, yeah, you should do automated emails because I've just booked 5 emails off an automated email campaign. And founders come to me and they dread wanting to do that. They're like, oh, Peter, I don't want to do this, but I feel like I have to because the rest of my industry is doing that, or the rest of my founder peer set. So how do you make that kind of outbounding or pipeline generation fun when it's like something that's draining you? What I would tell founders is write down like 3 or 4 different creative outbound experiments that you haven't ever seen done before, ever. If you don't want to do email and you don't want to send cold LinkedIn messages on an automated clip, don't do it. Like simply just don't do it because that's not going to be sustainable if it's not energy providing for you. But then think about what are unique ways you could reach out to your community of buyers in a way that's never been done before. And then try that. And as you try that across 3 or 4 different experiment types, first of all, you're going to learn a lot. Secondly, you might be pioneering something that you can actually scale and that nobody's tried before. And then thirdly, you're improving your personal brand and your company brand at the same time. And so those are things that I would think about just to be tangible. Like yesterday, I was talking to an SDR group and they're like all single threaded on booking meetings. And what I told them was, you can't be focused on booking meetings if you're going to book meetings, as counterintuitive as that sounds. What you have to focus on is how are you going to unlock an experience or a trust building exercise or a differentiated kind of memorable interaction that's going to build trust that then will help you book a meeting or a meetup, right, with the person you're trying to reach. And I think that simple mentality change ended up actually surfacing a lot of creative ideas. Then we started talking about, oh, instead of trying to book a meeting, what if for this conference we're going to, we booked a penthouse suite and we streamed the keynote and then we provided like a high-end breakfast for 20 executives. Could you actually sell that as an experience? Probably. If I were going to a conference, I'd be really interested in that. I don't want to be in a keynote with 50,000 other like random attendees. Or, one of my friends, when he went to a conference in Vegas, he actually like kind of had an off-the-wall idea. And he was like, instead of doing a booth, why don't we rent a cabana at one of the pools in Vegas and then have that be the meeting spot? Or in my past life, I did a whiskey tasting, right, with folks. And, that drew people to an event and built trust because they realized, oh, you're unlocking an experience for me. You're not just trying to sell me something or book a meeting with me. So I think these types of thinking outside the box type ideas, they're out there. People just don't pursue them because they automatically think they need to do what their peer is doing. But if you think I need to do something my peers aren't doing, that makes your outbounding process a lot more fun. And it's a better path to building trust and like this element of delight, in my opinion. So that's what I would say is like, just like you're trying to do with your product, you're trying to build a product that's one of one, build a sales experience that's one of one too. And if you take that approach, it makes it a lot more enjoyable, like I keep saying, and a lot more valuable for the long run because people remember how you reached out to them, the first impressions, and people remember like the long arc of trust building, not just, oh, like I need this product. They remember, oh, I need this product and I like how I feel working with this vendor or partner.